watching a PBS special and they were talking about the Black Panthers. And this is before The Truth of the Black Panthers came out. So this is somewhere late 80s, early 90s. And my dad said, that's bullshit. They ain't talking about how they bombed it and the people had to make a link chain with the children to stop them from firebombing, right? Like he immediately took that moment to correct the incorrect history that was being perpetuated on the TV in that moment, right? So I think that telling the truth, making sure that your children are exposed to Blackness, right? In subtle ways. Buying a book with the Black lead character, like Candace, getting that Black baby doll, even though they're gonna be like, I wanted the one on TV. It's still the same one, right? I think that you do it by having people around them. And not saying, my parents never said, you Black, we having a Black experience, right? It was just my norm. It was the norm that as my parents, they were intentionally creating. My dad was a staff sergeant. He could have been hanging with anybody on the base. He was intentionally choosing young men who were a lot of times from the inner city, who were married to young Black women, and he wanted them to have a family, an extended family away from their family, because it would make them more successful, and that's what part of what his job was, but because they would be happier. But it was intentional, and I think it has to be intentional. I think you can't play this kind of, they'll find out, they'll figure it out. I think you have to be really intentional about teaching the history of Black people in the world and in this country to your children. And that's where the pride comes from. The pride comes from the learning, right? Once you learn that before we were slaves, we were kings, we were artisans, we were orators, we were dancers, we were all of these, everything, right? We had civilization prior to those shackles. I think that once you learn about the shackles and how the people overcame after that, that is where the pridefulness in Blackness comes from. And I think you can't be derelict as a parent, whether you're rich or not so rich. You got to tell your children the history of who they are, because if you're not, then the world is going to say, y'all was dusty dancing in the jungle. We put y'all in shackles. We did y'all a favor. Y'all, Martin Luther King.
We civilized you. Yes. 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 I'm over it. I'm so over it. And like you said, the Google that shit, the you constants, because you know what? There is so much information. Every day I try to put a Black history fact on my Facebook page. And of course, Facebook is trying to step me down every single day, talking about I'm distressing people. No, I don't think so. I think I'm uplifting people. And believe it or not, a lot of the facts that I find, adults didn't know. And when they find out, they're glad that they did. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And then I have private messages all the time. I went and looked that stuff up. That was deep. So it's not even just on our children's level. We need to elevate our own self to make sure that we understand as well, because sometimes I think we forget. We get so caught up, and maybe that's what's going on with Eve. Maybe she just forgetting that the struggle, because baby girl, I need you to wake up. You're asleep at the wheel, and that is a problem. And we have to continue to uplift our communities. And with that, I do want to say this: we have a way to uplift our community too.